With the pandemic that came upon us, the rise of video conferencing tools like Microsoft Teams and Zoom has led to more aspects of the sales conversation to occur virtually. And what began as a crisis reaction has evolved into the new normal. But how normal is the new normal? We're talking about how the strong shift from in-person to virtual selling has transformed B2B sales experience. Virtual sales enablement, new organizations, KPIs, everything is evolving. In the Virtual Selling Podcast, we address these issues in depth twice a week with the experts and leaders of these transformations, heads of sales, sales ops, and sales enablement of the most innovative companies in the field. This podcast is sponsored by SalesDeck.io, the new SaaS platform to make your customer meetings more engaging and better prepared. Find out how you can shorten sales cycles, convert more leads, and increase customer engagement. Virtual selling is here to stay, and so is SalesDeck.io.
Hi, everybody. I'm very happy to be today with Elise Schaefer, Sales Manager at Nextroll. Hi, Elise. How are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Fine. And you? We will talk a lot about your journey from Pastry to a very nice position in sales today. But before, could you introduce us? Who is Nextroll and what you do?
Sure. So Elise Schaefer, of course. So I work for Nextroll in the Rollworks product division. So Nextroll is a company that really, as they say, they democratize advertising. So we have two different products. We've got AdRoll, which is, B2C, and then we have Rollworks, which is B2B. Rollworks, also has the capability to do the advertising side, but it is an ABM platform. So that is who Rollworks is.
Great. And your background is not at all into ad tech and technology because you started a cursus more into Pastry. Can you tell us a little bit about what you did 5 years ago?
Yeah, that's always a really fun thing when someone peeks at my LinkedIn before they speak to me, whether it's an interview process, whether I'm interviewing or they're interviewing with me. So I went to Le Cordon Bleu in Minneapolis, graduated in my, I think I was 21 or so, 2021. And, I was in the pastry field for a minute. But there was a pay cap on the role that I was in. I'm in Omaha, Nebraska, so there's not a lot that you can do to continue further your career, and you can be your own, business owner, your own boss. But even that only gets you so far. If your goal is to, try to create, more revenue for yourself or your family. So I was the North American Google Data Center pastry chef for Google. And, I was making $16 an hour and $16.50, I can't recall exactly the number. And I knew, okay, this is a company I make between a 3% and a 5% raise every year. And then they told me, okay, well, your role specifically has an $18 pay cap. And I said, okay, so I worked this job for however many years. I think at the time I'd actually done the math. I don't recall now. Between a 3 to 5% raise, and I hit that pay cap, and then what? And I had interviewed at a casino that was nearby because that would be, in terms of financially, that would be like the most, that would be the job that would pay me the most. And when I was interviewing with the head chef, he was like, oh yeah, the pastry chef before you, he was working like 80, 90 hours a week. And also we want to implement a new bread program. And he left because he wanted to spend time with family, and the pay was like 80 grand a year, which for me was like, oh my God, that's so much money. But he also, in the same breath he was saying that money, he was saying, oh yeah, the guy had like no life, but he had family, which is why he left. So that's what prompted me to get into pastry, and I loved it. I still do. But
why at first you went to Pastry? Because you were excited about Pastry? How come? Yeah.
Yeah. When I was little, I was one of those kids that would get in trouble for grabbing sticks of butter out of the refrigerator and eating it. And, I actually did go to a university here in the States for, I say it was about like 5 minutes. I went to University of Nebraska at Omaha for, I think I actually attended classes for about a semester. And then I spent the rest of that year watching my favorite cartoon with my best friend and baking cookies and cakes and pies, and then selling them out of my dorm room, which is hilarious and great, but obviously it was not the right college experience for me. So that's actually when I left and finally went to Le Cordon Bleu. I was like, okay, I kind of blew it here. Knew where my real interests lied, but there's lots of stories like that throughout my life where I was just really, really drawn to baking, whether it was kid or high school or college age. So
Great. So I understand that you understood after some months into pastry that the most money you can make would be 80 grand, working 80 hours a week, which is too much. So you decided to change, and now we can say that you have achieved at least 3 or 4 more times money than the best chef you knew before was achieving at the end of his career. So what made you move, and what was the move?
yeah, I have 2 daughters now. At the time, I just had the one. But to be completely honest, there were times in my life working in bakeries, I was on food stamps. I was on government assistance. At one point, I was on Medicaid, which is, like in the States as like free healthcare because you don't make enough money. And when I got a little bit older, I was able to be in roles, because I'm a good pastry chef. Like I'm not bad, I was able to get some of the jobs that did pay better and did have health insurance and holidays and, weekends off and things like that. But, health insurance still isn't good. And, those are things when you are kind of on your own, as an adult, it's kind of like blasé, like, if it happens, it happens. But, when you've got a kid in the mix, you really have to be thoughtful about the career choices that you're making. And, my daughter at the time just had a lot of, she had a lot of food allergies and eczema. And so we were always ending up at the doctor for one reason or another. And, it got to a point where I was like, I'd like to take my daughter on a vacation, or I'd like to buy a home someday, or, the health insurance thing, obviously. And it became something where I just knew that I needed to make a change. And that I didn't have to give up pastry completely to do that. I actually still do pop-ups in Omaha. The pop-up is like you bring all your stuff to like a space. I like doing them at dive bars because I love dive bars. But I do like plated pastries or, different things. But yeah, that's I still do it, but I knew I needed to leave because I think at some point you have to call a spade when it comes to, doing what you need for your mental health, and not so you don't have to worry about everything all the time.
That's for sure. And so you moved to sales. Was it difficult to move from pastry to sales, to find your first job in sales?
It was in some ways. To be fair, there's not a lot of places in Omaha, Nebraska there to work in sales. And if you want to work in a specific tech space, whether it's like SaaS or otherwise, there's even less. And so I had interviewed at Flywheel, and I didn't have any sales experience other than I had worked at Ulta, which is like a makeup, store when I was like 19. And so they were like, we think you're really nice, but, we'd like to see some more experience. And that was for an account executive position. And so I was like, okay, well then I'll go get that experience and then I'll come back, and then I'll work for you. And I had found, they call themselves Thrive now. At the time they were Dex Media, which is Yellow Pages advertising and Yellow Pages and digital advertising. So they were just breaking into like SaaS and kind of rebranding themselves at the time. So marketing automation software is what they were selling alongside their Yellow Pages. But that sales floor was not a difficult one to get in. I think because it was very old school. It's more like a call center. But getting into the actual SaaS companies, that like 2 or 3 of them that were here at the time, getting in there was really difficult. You had to know someone, and also you still needed to, for the most part, know how to do the job already, which was, it's a catch-22, right?
And how do you come to sales? Is it because you met some sales guy at Google when you worked there, or and into tech also? What gives you the inspiration to make this change?
This is actually a fun story that I haven't really talked about. I was actually supposed to open up a bakery in Omaha, and I was in this area called Benson, which is, you know, kind of like this hip bar and restaurant area. And you know, any restaurant owner knows, like, when you start doing renovations before you open, you have to kind of be careful. You can't really like pay yourself too much. And so I had no way of making savings. And so, you know, at the same time that I had known that I needed to make savings, I told myself, and this story, by the way, is kind of in between me knowing for sure that I needed to leave sales and me actually starting sales. So I had started this job at Dex, and it was 60 grand a year, which I was like, oh my God, that's like, I'm like a millionaire. And when I got there, I was supposed to only, in my head, I was like, okay, I'll work here for, you know, 6 months while we do renovations in the restaurant, and then I'll be done. And just something happened with the business partner where I was like looking at the paperwork, looking at the things that they were suggesting, and I was like, you know, I'm not actually like, we don't actually have to do this yet. Nothing had actually started, and it just didn't feel right. And so I pulled out. I said, you know, if I'm going to do it, it has to be my way. It has to be the right way, and it has to be fair and equitable for both of us. And it wasn't for me at the time. And so I said, best of luck to you. I am going to part ways. And I wound up staying in sales. And I think about, you know, 8 months into that job, I had been promoted twice, and my manager and I were having a conversation, and she said, you know, you have to decide that you're all in, because right now you're a roller coaster. You go up, you go down, and that's pretty normal for sales. She said, but once you decide that you're all in, you can really make a career for yourself. And, you know, that's when, you know, I got to a point where I realized, like, okay, all those worries that I just told you about, Gabriel, all those things, I was like, okay, this is the moment that I need to decide. And so I made a decision, and that's the accumulation of all those worries that I'd had as a young mom, and as someone who just wanted some nicer things for my daughter, and some things that I just couldn't afford. And so I made that decision, and that's really how I landed in it. But I don't talk about that too much. It's kind of a bumpy story.
And so you understood that you was good for sale at this time also, because you already had 2 promotion after a few months. What do you see, and you have no background in sales, what do you think makes you a good salesperson without background?
You know, my dad is a business owner, and my mom had shifted to like a contracting position after like 13 years at a company. And, you know, as a kid, just seeing how hard the two of them worked. And of course, like growing up, there were landlines. And so the phone was always ringing. Someone was always trying to sell something, whether it was the general telemarketers that everyone's parents gets, to, you know, maybe the ones that were actually trying to sell my dad something more specific. He's an electrical engineer. And I think for me, that always connected to me, because it was really disruptive. It was annoying. No one likes telemarketers. But I think as a kid, I had always wished that they would just get to the point faster. And then as an adult, you know, and as a parent, I was thinking about, you know, there's this thing when you're parenting and you tell your kid no, but if you don't explain why, then why would they listen to you? And it's a very basic thing, and it works with, it's not just children, it's like basic human interaction. And I think I realized when I was on the sales floor that I just wanted people to do what I would want them to do for me, or what I would have wanted for my parents when I was younger. And so I just ran a very honest sales process. I was myself. And anytime someone told me, you know, say it specifically like this, you know, read the script, I would, you know, figure out what the script was, what the messaging was behind it. And then I would not use it. I would use my own vocabulary so it sounded like me. And if my clients needed education, I would just tell them, like, I would teach them all the things that I had just learned in my training about marketing, and, you know, anything that I knew that they needed to know in order to know that they were making the best decision for themselves. And I think that's what made a really big difference. I wasn't taught a formal methodology in that sales org, but I figured out pretty quickly that no one wants to make a decision if they feel like you're twisting their arm. And so, all I needed to do was make sure that they had everything that they needed to feel like they were really making the right decision for their business, because they were small business owners. And as much as they're buying with their business wallet, I mean, their business wallet is pretty close to their own wallet at that SMB size for how small they were. So I think that's what made the biggest difference on that sales floor for me.
So it's really authenticity and empathy, I would say.
Yeah, definitely.
So after deciding to stay into sales and to be all in, and having some few more months within Dex, you came back to Flywheel?
Yeah, it was getting to be around Christmas time, and I hadn't known someone that worked there in the customer success department, and we were at a Christmas party, and he said, we're hiring again, and so I spruced up my resume and I reapplied, and that's how I ended up just getting back into their interview rooms and their conference rooms there. And
so you get the job this time?
Yeah. I'll say at the time I was a very awkward interviewer. I think I actually, it was a well-known thing because we were a pretty small company. I think I was the 110th hire. I finger gunned. I don't know do French people do that? The finger gun?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did that in my interview. I was so awkward, but yeah, they hired me. They did.
Great. And there you had a nice career and evolving after less than 2 years to a team lead and then to sales manager. Can you tell us a little bit about this experience that I'm sure was a foundation experience for you?
Yeah, I think a lot of what got me there. So I had already had some, I call it sales boot camp, working in a call center that's very like, high pressure, high stakes. Like their performance plans were less performance plans and more like perform or someone else will, and you can go perform somewhere else. And so when I got onto that sales floor, I had a lot of drive already, whether it was personal or whether it was just kind of a foundation that was set from a previous sales org. And I actually came in at an entry-level SDR position because they were hiring for their first SDR team. And I was like, oh, thank God, I'll take a step back. It'll kind of be like a break. Everyone who's been an SDR knows that that's not the case. It's a very hard job, but it got me another skill set that I didn't have really from my previous position. So what happened there is that, we were very small. I want to say our sales team might've been around maybe like somewhere between like 15 to 20 people when we had started. And I realized pretty quickly that there were a lot of things that we didn't have. And a lot of it had to do with, we just weren't in that hiring stage yet. So sales operations, initially, we didn't have it. Marketing operations was whoever on the marketing team happened to know about that tool and could help you, or you just get pointed to, the software support team for that company. And my colleague, Kelsey Stokes, actually got promoted from account executive into sales operations. And she was just one person. And I realized pretty quickly that she was getting bogged down with tickets. And as an SDR team, there are all sorts of routing issues that we would deal with. And so I wound up taking a bunch of HubSpot courses, sales enablement certifications, just anything that I could get my hands on in the HubSpot Academy that I thought would be relevant, I was taking it. And, all that context meant that I was also able to get to know our marketing partners better. And so I just asked them questions. And, what wound up happening is that, the team scaled and, I think we were at like 16 people by the time I became a sales manager, or 16 people on the SDR team, excuse me, by the time I became a sales manager. But a lot of what got me that sales manager role was all those courses that I was taking and all the help that I was giving the sales org. And I think when you're at that stage of a startup, everyone needs all the help they can get. And it can certainly be maybe bad for some people because maybe they take too much on. But as long as you're not taking on too much, it can also give you the opportunity to do things and learn things and get your hands into projects that you wouldn't otherwise get elsewhere. And I think, that's really what happened between, me going from SDR to me getting into management at Flywheel was just all the context that I had to the business, even in the back end, like all the workflows in HubSpot. I got to a point where I knew that we needed a new routing workflow. So I would build one and then I'd send it to sales ops. And then I'd say, hey, does this look good? And she would say, yeah, that looks great. Thank you for doing that. And other times she would say, actually, there's something missing here. And she would teach me. And then the next time I would just do that instead. And so that's really how all that knowledge came to be about. But
did you have time to learn on the HubSpot Academy during your free time? Was it easy with your daughters, or you did that at work, or how do you manage to learn while working and having a kids or two kids also?
Yeah, some of it I did at home, but most of it I just did at work. I would like over lunch or something, I'd just kind of be hanging out at my desk and passively like watching the videos and taking in the material. And other times, I had a leader that encouraged me, when he eventually figured out that I was doing this, because I didn't really tell people I was doing it. I just was doing it. He started encouraging me to do it, and then told me to like set aside maybe like 30 minutes to an hour each week to work on it. So yeah.
And in terms of salary, you made an increase from Dex to Flywheel and from SDR to sales manager. Can you tell us about those raise?
Yeah, so it was actually a step back into SDR. And in SDR, these are Midwest pay, and also for anyone listening, this was back in like 2018, so their pay things are different now, right? But I think I was making around 45 OTE as an SDR, and then when I got into sales management, it was 120, and so I was like, holy cow, like that was an insane difference for me. I mean, that was life changing. And it also gave me more stock options, which at the time I had befriended someone in finance. I had to call and be like, what is this? Like, I don't know what this is. I'm from kitchens. Like, you have to teach me. But yeah, it was a very, very big difference.
And after sales, after Flywheel, you went to another company, and we were already in the middle of the pandemic at this time.
Yes. Yep. So after Flywheel, we were actually acquired by WP Engine in 2019. And so I spent a lot of time working with WP Engine. They were more like mid-market enterprise, whereas like Flywheel, we were more SMB. And so I got to spend a lot of time working and managing teams on the WP Engine side, and then assisted with the the acquisition, the merger, whether it was like merging the systems, the HubSpot workflows were quite a project, to be honest. But the methodologies that each team was using, that was, probably one of the more important projects I've had in my career, because it was like getting to work for a completely different company. And then also I was able to like take one system that I already knew, and then another system that I taught myself quickly, and then getting to project manage that with senior leadership, and really, I think it gave me a platform that would have been difficult to have otherwise. But I had WP Engine after Flywheel, of course, that merger and acquisition, and then after that, I left to go be head of business development at a French company called 360 Learning, which you told me you're familiar with.
Yeah, too. I know it. It's a great e-learning company in France.
Yes, of course. Yeah, it's such a cool product, and it's interesting. I didn't really have any preference to at the time to the company that I had gone to tool wise, like what I was selling specifically or who I was selling to. And when 360 Learning came along, just the organization is just incredibly impressive in terms of how they communicate with each other, and the software itself is very sleek, and when it comes to remote onboarding and learning, I mean, it's incredibly impressive. But yeah, I landed at 360 Learning as head of business development and just helped build out their different top of funnel teams, worked with demand gen on some of the routing that was happening, worked on, helping them understand like, what are the KPIs that we need to focus on? And, how do we create a baseline of like, this is what good is? And as well as, obviously you want to figure out like a lead scoring matrix and all of that stuff. That's the work that I did there. But
that's interesting. But what is interesting also that you are not working anymore for an Omaha, Nebraska company, but no from a Paris, France company or New York at this time, I believe. So what made this change possible? Working from home, forgetting about the boundaries with virtual selling and the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head there. And I've mentioned too, I'm in Omaha, Nebraska. There's like, you can work for WP Engine or you can work for Toast. And as far as SaaS products, that's it, and I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, I was panicking a little bit because at that time I wasn't just focused on that I was getting to work remotely from home right then. I was thinking, oh my God, I know that I'm good at what I do. And I know I'm ready for another challenge. I can't move, I can't take my daughters away from where we live now. And did I stunt my career? And that was at the very beginning of the pandemic. And as the pandemic moved on and people realized this whole time when we've been saying that you can't work remotely, sales isn't successful remote, I think many companies realize that's actually the opposite. Some sales teams, depending on the leadership and of course, how everything else is functioning, but some sales teams are significantly more successful remote. But, companies being open to remote work, that allowed me to interview for companies I would have never, ever had the opportunity to interview for. And it also helped me network. I think I would not be, getting to work with any of the caliber of people because you can recruit from literally anywhere. You can recruit the best talent from anywhere. There's no boundaries. And so I think it's made a significant change for me and who I can work with, whether it's who's hiring me or who I'm hiring. And it's been amazing. It's
been a change also in terms of salaries again, because you
yes.
increased again.
Yes. Yeah. Like I said, I'm in Omaha, Nebraska. Cost of living, I don't know what the stat is now. At one point they had said it's it's the best cost of living in the States or whatever. And I'm getting paid San Francisco salaries or like New York based salaries. And no, I didn't have to twist an arm to do it. The companies just know. They're like, well, we don't care where you live. We're going to pay you what we've budgeted that we know is fair because we also want the best talent. And it's been, I've more than doubled the salary that I had when I initially went into sales management when I was getting paid a Omaha, Nebraska sales manager's salary. So it's been, I'll say it again, life-changing to say the least.
It's almost a 20-time increase from Pastry to what you have today, which is wow, extraordinary.
When I was able to buy a house. I
didn't
have any savings before, so it's been a wild ride for sure.
Great. This episode was much longer than usual, but it was a very nice journey on stories. So thanks a lot, Elise. This episode of the Virtual Selling Podcast is over. Thanks for sticking around. Join us twice a week for a new episode with new stories and challenge of giants in the field. If you enjoyed today's episode, we are always listening for your feedback. Share the show and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss any episode. This episode was brought to you by SalesDeck.io, the virtual selling platform that increases your sales team efficiency and sales readiness, enable remote management, and vamps sales operational excellence. Book your SalesDeck.io demo today to discover how you can close more deals with engaging and better prep customer meeting. Thanks a lot, Elise.
Yeah, of course.